Class is now in session. I'm Professor Hockey, and today is another Sharks Weekly recap, this time of week 21. So the Sharks started out this week with a rematch against the Boston Bruins, a team who basically stole a win from under the Sharks' hands when they defeated them 6-5 in the overtime. So it was expected the Sharks would have a much better performance, but that would not end up being the case. Even though the Sharks would get the first goal of this game, they'd end up dropping 4-1 to the Boston Bruins, including a third period which had a ton of fights, 3 separate fights. The Sharks playing a very physical game, but they weren't playing a very good game, and that's why they end up losing that one. Then the Sharks came back to home, as that was the final game of a 4-game road trip against the Boston Bruins. They hosted the Colorado Avalanche, a team they had already defeated once this season, and they managed to do so again. While it ended up being somewhat close in the third period, the Sharks do get the 1-goal victory, a 4-3 victory over Colorado. The Sharks then hosted the Blackhawks, another team who they have already beaten once this season that comes from the Central Division, and while going into the third period, the game was tied. It was a pretty tightly played game. The Sharks managed to pull away from the Blackhawks, 2 unanswered goals to make it 4-2, as well as an empty netter from Melker Karlsson, and the Sharks made it 5-2 thanks to a loss from the Calgary Flames side on the Saturday, with the Blackhawks game taking place on the Sunday. The Sharks finished the week within 3 points of the Calgary Flames for first place in the Pacific Division. In terms of the offense this week, it was very split up among all the members of the team, among all the forwards. Mostly Marcus Sorensen did lead the way with 3 goals, 0 assists for 3 points, now at 23 points on the season. This puts him maybe potentially in range of getting 30 points, not 90 points, 30 points, which is pretty good for a bottom 6 forward. And then after Sorensen, there were a bunch of players tied with 2 points. Melker Karlsson had 2 goals, both coming in the Blackhawks game, to put himself up to 11 goals on the season, 15 points in general. Timo Meier with 2 goals himself, 23 goals on the season, 54 points. Logan Couture added a goal and an assist, putting his point total up to 59 on the year. Tomas Hertl, a goal and an assist, putting his point total up to 58. And then Joe Pavelski, a goal and an assist. He goes up to 36 goals now, as well as 61 points as he passes the 60-point mark. Otherwise, there were 6 other players who had just 2 assists for 2 points. I believe those players were Tim Heed, Kevin Labanc, Michael Haley, Brent Burns, Joe Thornton, and Jonas Donskoy. For the news of the week, of course, Erik Karlsson makes his usual return here as we take another look at the groin injury. He ended up playing the game against Boston after he sat out the game against the Red Wings after he had to leave the game against the Blue Jackets halfway through. So he plays this one against Boston. He ends up re-aggravating this injury some point in the second period. He then returns a few minutes later, seems to clearly not be at 100%, so he again leaves, doesn't come out for the third period, and then he was confirmed to not play for the rest of this week, so he missed the game against the Avalanche and the Blackhawks. Now that the Sharks do have a pretty considerable break, at least relatively compared to the rest of the schedule, before they play again on Thursday, we'll see if Erik Karlsson does manage to make a return to the lineup. My guess is that he probably won't, but then again, the Sharks seemingly have mismanaged his injury in the past couple of months anyhow, so I guess anything could happen. Next, Gustav Nyquist, of course, was the newest Sharks, played his first 3 games as a San Jose Shark, did not register a single point, but he did look pretty good. It seems as though the potential is there. He's begun to develop chemistry with a few of the players, and I suspect that by this time next week, I will be talking about Nyquist having gotten his first assist and potentially even his first goal as a San Jose Shark. Next is the playoff crunch. Now, while the Sharks and by extension the San Jose Barracuda are about over a month away from actually the season ending, about 16 or so games for both of them, when it comes to the Sharks junior teams, and so the junior teams in general, there's actually only 2 weeks left in the season. By not next Sunday, but the Sunday after that, the season will be over, so a lot of the junior teams have about 5, maybe 6 games left on the year. For the Sharks players who this matters for, Sasha Chmelevski on the Ottawa 67s, that team has clinched a playoff spot already. Otherwise, in the OHL, Ryan Merkley on the Peterborough Petes, his team is in a pretty intense playoff battle to try and secure a spot, so it'll be interesting down the last couple of weeks. Ivan Chekovich in the QMJHL, his team Baie-Comeau Drakkar, they have clinched a playoff spot, as well as the fact that Zachary Aimant, the Sharks goaltending prospect from the QMJHL, is on the Q's best team in the entire league. I think their team is on some sort of 24-game winning streak, if I'm not mistaken, so he's certainly in the playoffs as well. And on to the WHL, Joachim Bleckfeld on the Portland Winterhawks has also clinched his spot. And so the main point of watch, I would say, down these last couple of weeks for junior hockey would be Ryan Merkley. Hopefully his team does manage to make it in. Class dismissed.